What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's Aaron Nagler here, joined by Andy Herman of the Pack a Day Podcast, Cheesehead TV, Pack a Day Podcast, live. Andy Herman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I had a great week today. It, it feels like that.
Oh, that's so good. It's so
how,
true.
how how stupidly important is Twitter to what? Like I didn't know what was
Fun times, right? Fun
I don't even
times this morning.
like admitting to it. Like how I was so frustrated by everything. Like, but I'm happy to be here chatting with you.
The week quip is on point because I specifically reached out to you about doing this because I remember at the end of last year's week one in a day.
Yeah.
I did post kind of a joke photo on my Instagram where I was like, day one of free agency in the books, and it looked like I had gotten into a fight because I just remember the end of that day talking about this just with myself. I was
Yep.
like, wait a second, I need someone to bounce this off of. And who else? Who would be more perfect than Andy Herman?
Justice Mosqueda.
Yes, of course. We'll undoubtedly both talk to Justice at some point later this week.
For sure.
But I did want to talk to you and, more importantly, talk to Packers fans worldwide because,
Likewise.
look, it feels like this happens every year, but even more so this season. A lot of expectations, a lot of names, a lot of potential targets that were mostly off the board by the time legal tampering period started this afternoon. And then, you get into the first blush of the open period, if you will, and the Packers made a couple signings, but neither one of them had been targets that I would say the public had been glommed onto. What was your initial reaction to both the Banks and the Nate Hobbs signing?
Yeah, first of all, if anyone had glommed on to either of them, kudos to you, because these are two people that, I mean, Aaron, you and I have gone through, potential free agent signing episodes for, I don't know, a solid 6 months now.
Yes, sir.
These were two people that I did not necessarily have on the top of my radar. The two positions that certainly we have talked about quite a bit in corner and offensive line that they could quite easily and probably should address in some capacity. The Hobbs ones it makes a lot of sense in the fact that just everything from a versatility standpoint. The one thing that the red herring, if you will, of why I didn't look further into Hobbs was because he's a slot guy. And you sort of look at it last year and you're like, once Bullard got in there, they kind of solidified things a little bit. I didn't think they'd aggressively go in that direction. Now, the reporting, of course, is that they plan on playing him on the outside as well, which erases that red herring quite a bit. And then you take that piece away and it's like, oh, he's young, he's 6 foot tall, all the athletic traits, can play inside, outside. And you're like, all right, well, you could have probably hit me over the head with a hammer on that one, and it probably would have been a little bit more obvious. Like that one now makes a lot more sense that you take away just sort of the slot piece from it. And then, Banks, no question whatsoever, I thought that they would address the offensive line in some capacity. Never in a million years did I think a $77 million guard would have been the direction that they necessarily would have went in. And just when they've sort of seemed allergic to spending big money on interior offensive line in the past, and you could have quite easily made the argument of, all right, well, you've got Rasheed Walker, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, Jordan Morgan, Zach Tom. They probably need a piece or two there, but you don't probably need to do something ultra aggressive. Yet here they were going with Aaron Banks and being pretty freaking aggressive in that way. So I think both very interesting signings that I'm sure we have a ton to dig into that we'll get to over the course of this.
Yeah, the Banks thing was interesting because, to your point, it's not something historically that they've done as far as struck out in free agency, other than like a reclamation project, like an Andre Dillard last year, right? But it's very rare. Their MO has been, we're going to draft and develop these guys. So much has been made about their success on day 3, right? I mean, the problem, of course, is that's not 100% hit rate. You're doing that across a number of years and finding some gems there. I do think this is not a direct reaction, obviously, to one game in the playoffs in Philadelphia, but I do think that spoke to something larger. And I think it ties in, and this is, I know there will be questions about this, to the urgency thing that Brian mentioned, right? As far as the whole organization has to be a little bit more urgent. Well, I think that's a perfect example where in years past, I do not doubt for a moment Gutekunst would have said, you know what? I like what we have in-house. We'll continue to draft. We'll continue to develop guys, and we'll be okay there. I think this is him saying, no, we're not okay there, and we don't have time to wait. I know that's not the kind of thing that people want. They want a big splash. They want a big name. They want the DK Metcalfs of the world. But I do think this is an example of what he's talking about. This is not their regular MO. That signing in particular is a little outside their, I'm not going to say comfort zone, because I think they obviously know what they're doing.
Right.
But to me, that speaks to what he's talking about when he talks about urgency.
I think so too. I think no stone left unturned. And I think, first of all, the offensive line, I know you touched base on it on social media already, of like what happened in that Eagles game when they had some adversity on the offensive line and just everything crumbled. And we know how important it's going to be too for I think Josh Jacobs on that offensive line to continue to get going, and then just protecting Jordan, making sure that he's got the offensive line that he needs moving forward. You still have a massive investment in him. You want to know my thing I'm most curious about, Aaron, in this?
Yeah.
It's still very early in the process of obviously going through both of these players. But when it comes to Banks in particular, this is a 6'5", 325, a little bit more of a mauler on the interior.
Yes.
We saw a transition last year in this running game with Josh Jacobs at running back. We saw offensive lines that needed to get after people do very successfully in running games that got after people do very successfully in the NFL last year. I've kind of already got some fun ideas in my head of Aaron Banks at left guard, Elton Jenkins at center, Sean Ryan at right guard. And we'll see. There's going to be a lot of time to, figure all of this out. But 3 bigger, more road grading guys in the middle of that offensive line. To me, there could theoretically be something to that. I'm curious if you've put any thought into that so far, of maybe if this is a little bit of a transition to, hey, maybe the finesse, and that it's always been finesse, but you get my point. Maybe more of the zone blocking and this sort of like this is a transition a little bit at least, and we're gonna punch some more people in the mouth in the ground game. Just curious.
I think there's something to it. I do think they're never going to be completely like, a power team, right? They're always going to have zone concepts, and they're always going to have to mix and match. But I do think it's obvious if you watch last year. And I talked to Bobby Peters about this at the Combine, because he, put out his book every year looking at the Packers offense. And it was interesting because, I'm obviously not breaking down every single freaking run concept each and every play for an entire season, but it did look like a lot more counter, a lot more power, a lot more angle blocking. And, Bobby, who does do that, kind of came with, not only that, but they really got away from duo, which is something was a staple for them for the last 2 or 3 years. And for those who maybe don't know, simplistically, duo, you get 2 guys, usually like a center and a guard, up on the initial lineman, and the other one they make their push, and then somebody peels off and gets up to the second level. And it's a kind of a base concept in zone, a lot of the zone stuff. I think Banks gives them the opportunity to get back to some of that. And
I think so too.
As much as like he is a road grader, like you said, there's zero doubt about that. I think he's athletic enough, and at that size, which is crazy, but he's athletic enough to, they can get guys moving, but still kind of sprinkle in some of those zone concepts that they got away from last year. Because look, you know as well as I do, the way the offense kind of, I'm not going to say fell apart, but really underachieved as the season went on. I think they've got to get back to some of what they were doing at the end of 2023, where you saw Jordan Love was so successful in a lot of the kind of zone play action.
Yeah.
Will he or won't he hand it off kind of stuff, instead of, obviously, you're going to continue to utilize the power stuff. You're going to continue to utilize the spinner stuff out of the gun. But, man, if they could find a happy medium there and a balance, and I think Banks should help them get there,
Agreed.
That's when you're cooking with gas. That's where it gets real fun, I think, on offense.
And this is, so just really quick, this is a player that, for that exact reason, I loved coming out of college. And again, I haven't had the chance to go through all the tape from his time in San Fran yet, but just
you're such a slacker, Herman.
Yeah, I know. You have no idea how much it pains me just to say those words, to be honest. But the thing I loved about him is he was this big 6'5", 325 guy, but he moved so incredibly well for his size and could get to the second level. And I'm very excited to dig into it for that very reason, because, man, if you do hit on him, if he can even become a little bit better in Green Bay than I think what he was in San Francisco, even, there is so much meat on that bone for what he, just from a potential standpoint. Obviously still young, first contract after his rookie contract.
Right.
And I'm really excited to see what he can bring to this offense and just how all the pieces fit together on that offensive line.
One thing to note, and I'm sure people will bring it up, especially the Packers bashers who claim to be Packers fans, but all they do is bitch about the Packers. Y'all are crazy, by the way. Y'all are mystified to me in my life. But yes, he is coming off a down year. There is zero doubt. You don't have to look very far. There are plenty of games that you can point to in this past season where they're probably not his best effort, not his best performance. But totality wise, you look at his entire career, he's 3-year starter. He is 100% got everything they need to be a frontline starter in this offense and to have what I expect will be a bounce back season in 2024 or 2025. I'm sorry. Let's flip it over to the defensive side. And hello to everybody in the comments. We see your comments. We see your questions. We'll get to you all very, very quickly, but I just want to get Andy's initial thoughts here. Another corner from the Raiders. I do believe he played 1 year with Keyshawn Nixon, if I'm lining things up right.
Should be right, I think. Yep.
I think so. Interesting to know if there was any conversation there, if maybe they talked to each other at all. But I think this is all about, and I know Ryan Wood's initial report has suggested that he will play on the perimeter, or at least that's where he'll start. I think this gives Hafley a ton of versatility and possibility in the back end. It's something you and I have talked about a lot throughout the season as far as one injury kind of messing everything up on the back end in games where they've set their kind of rotation and they've got everything ready to go, and then someone gets hurt. Now everyone's have to move and things kind of fall apart on the back end. We saw it happen 2 or 3 times this past season. I think this gives them a guy who's played a lot, obviously in the slot. They're going to try him initially at the perimeter, but if and when things happen, because they always do, he's someone who's played a ton of snaps in the slot and can slide in there without completely having to tear up your plan and or kind of rotation. He can hopefully allow you to just keep humming with what you're calling.
There's 2 pieces of this that I love. Number one is exactly what you just mentioned, in case bleep happens, right? Like when things go wrong, when things happen, you've got Javon Bullard who can play in the slot. You've got Nixon who can play in the slot. You've got Hobbs that can play in the slot. Like you've got a lot of different versatility and options. Guys who can play outside, inside. That just gives you a variety of different ways for covering again in case crap happens. The other piece is, this is not, again, the Joe Barry defense where everything was so static and everyone's going to play their role. Like Jeff Hafley is much more in that Matt LaFleur range of, hey, you give me all of these different pieces and I'm going to find ways to utilize them. And game 1, I might utilize them in this way. And then the very next week, I might take them and reshape them into something completely different. He's like a artist at Taco Bell making a new menu item with the 5 same ingredients. He's just a genius, right? So,
wow,
you
went a long way with that one, Herman. Holy cow!
That was an onion pull, by the way. That's one of my favorite onion bits of all time.
Amazing.
But anyway, my point being here is you could theoretically see in a game where you've got more wide receivers being like, where they're going to go more 11 personnel, and maybe Javon Bullard doesn't make as much sense in that game, being like, okay, we want either Nixon or Hobbs in the slot in that game. We want to go Valentine and the other one on the outside, and we want to go more corner heavy in that game. And there could be games where you see a lot of 12 personnel and say, okay, this is going to be a Hobbs and Nixon on the outside with Bullard in the slot.
Yes.
And again, it just gives you options and versatility and so many ways to mix and match and figure out the best possible way to shut down those opposing offenses. So again, you give Matt LaFleur and Jeff Hafley different pieces and different options to work with. They're going to find the way to utilize it in the best way based on the matchup that they're given. And that's why I think moves like this are very smart for these sort of coordinators and play callers.
That, to me, is the whole key to this signing, as far as being able to be opponent specific with your game planning, but being able to maintain it regardless of what happens. So yeah, I'm with you 100% there. And I do think, given, again, what we talked about at the start, as far as like all the, you talk for months about targets and who they might, and this guy, all these names. I do think the initial reaction to this will probably be somewhat muted in Packers fandom, but I do believe that the more people settle in and kind of look at it in its totality, and this is just day 1, right? Who knows what's coming in these next days, weeks, what have you.
Correct.
But this does makes a ton of sense. And for a team, so much gets made about like the additions, whatever. Man, this is a team that won 11 games last year. They're a top 10 defense, top 5 offense. It's not like they're a reclamation project. You see it each and every season when day 1 rolls around, and you do see these monster deals being handed out. Man, yes, there are talented players that have been signed today. There is no question about it. But the market rate on day 1 of free agency is usually on the high side, and there are certainly plenty of opportunities to still add talent. And it's a team that doesn't need, for the most part, to overpay to do it. And I think, we got to see these contracts, as you and I exchanged today. We got to take a look at the numbers, but I think, given market rates, the Packers did pretty well today in that regard.
And they found positions of need. I thought the Hobbs deal in particular was good value, especially with what's been going around for a corner in the corner market right now. Like that to me, very solid deal. And then, like you said, with the Banks one, let's kind of see what the numbers look like. But I mean, a going rate like Alaric Jackson, the left tackle for the Rams, and I get tackle versus guard, etc. But like again, a player that not many people even knew of went for 19 mil per year at left tackle as well. And that was a re-signing. That wasn't even a guy that was on the open market. So offensive linemen, specifically starting caliber offensive linemen, they're tough to come by. Grab them while you can. And to me, I've seen some people say like this means that Jordan Morgan's a bust or that Rasheed Walker is going to get traded. To me, you hang on to all of these offensive linemen as long as you possibly can. You cannot have enough of them. And to me, Jordan Morgan's just getting started, and where he ends up in this situation, maybe he is the sixth guy this year. Okay, so like, you know what's awesome to have him as a sixth guy this year, if that's what it ends up.
Could have used him as a sixth guy in the playoffs. I'll tell you that.
Very much so. So no, I'm not willing to move into the Jordan Morgan's a bust or that they're thinking that anything like that. It's just acquiring offensive linemen because you're going to need it through the course of the season.
I do think, I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think, look, it's about competition, and they're going to go into this summer like however they line up in shorts and t-shirts and what have you. But man, it's all about getting to camp. So that, to me, unless there's somebody out there who makes a ridiculous offer for Rasheed Walker, yeah, you absolutely hold on to him and you let him and Jordan Morgan compete in camp, which I suspect is the idea, given that he was drafted as a left tackle. Like, I know they played him at guard last year, but I think they'll give him an opportunity to win that job. And if they come out of camp and say, Morgan wins the job, then maybe they flip Walker. But even then, I don't hate having a tackle who's got a ton of starting experience on my bench for a year.
No.
Like, I think they're way too precious, especially when you see how poor offensive line play is around the league. I'm very.
I'd have no issue if they would have got another one. I'd have no issue if you said they went and signed like another value free agent or got a guy in the third round. Be my guest, because you know
they
what?
Probably will. That's the thing.
And here's the thing,
the draft,
right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Rasheed Walker, unrestricted free agent. And we all know that Goody is not looking at this just for 2025, right? This is 25, 26, 27. Right next year, Rasheed Walker, unrestricted free agent. Sean Ryan, unrestricted free agent. Zach Tom, unrestricted free agent. Elton Jenkins got a $20 million that you can get off his cap if you want to move off of him next year, that you're going to have basically a team option on, if nothing else. This is a offensive line that right now, there's only two people I could look you in the eye and say are going to be on this offensive line for certain, no matter what. And that's Jordan Morgan and Aaron Banks. Like, those are pretty much the only two. I think Zach Tom's going to be there.
Zach Tom is most likely going to be back.
Yes,
like,
but
that's a sign
as of right now. That's where things are at. So it's not just this year, but it's next year as well. And keep adding to that line, keep adding to both trenches, for that matter.
We got a ton of folks chiming in. Got a lot of super chats to get to. Let's open it up here. I want to give a shout out to Francis for joining the Carry the G Club. Appreciate you and the support. Steve Snyder starting us off with a perfect super chat on a Packers free agent stream. Steve starts us off with Bears still suck. Before we get going, I do want to ask you, Andy, it was interesting to watch how you knew going into this offseason the Bears needed to address the offensive line. That was very common, kind of parroted talking point for good reason. It's something they needed to do. Are you surprised at how aggressive they've been as far as the number of moves they've already made prior to even like half a day of free agency being under
the Bears being aggressive on day one of free agency will never surprise me, because they have a offseason championship to unhold. It's
fair
like,
point.
If you think the Bulls in Chicago have a dynasty with their 6 championships with Jordan, there's nothing like the Bears have going for their offseason dynasty. So the number one, that will never surprise me. But number two, to give credit to the Bears, a complete 180 from what they did last year of going very weapon heavy, and Gerald Everett and Keenan Allen and Roma Dunze and getting all these weapons, and forgetting that the infrastructure of your lines needed a whole crap ton of work, and they basically ignored it. I think they're very wise to go with, a Ben Johnson offense and Caleb Williams, knowing that everything that front office and coach needs to do to be successful is based entirely upon Caleb Williams and his success. Going and getting him an offensive line that's going to be able to protect him much better than the line they had a season ago. You're going and getting Dahlman and Tooney and Jonah Jackson as the other one, I think makes a ton of sense. And then going and getting the other trenches too. With Adenigbo, somebody we talked about potentially for Green Bay, and then Grady Jarrett as well. A much
the Jarrett
smarter
one
approach.
hurt. The Jarrett one hurt. I loved him in the draft. But
much smarter approach to free agency. Hopefully they still bears it up because they do that a lot, but it's a much smarter approach, and I hate it.
I was going to say, they're going to make all these moves. They're going to solidify their offensive line. Ben Johnson's going to call all these plays, and Caleb Williams is still going to hold on to the ball and take all
way too long.
So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. Como Cheesehead, what a handle. Thanks for the super chat. Gents, I appreciate everything you do for Packers fans worldwide. I've been in the military for 16 years, and I'm coming home for the draft.
That's awesome.
What should my brother and I check out in Green Bay pre-draft? Wow, dude, that's amazing.
That's awesome. Very much so.
Well, you should 100%. If you're going to be I don't know if you're going to be there the week before. Andy and I are going to be at the Timber Rattlers game the Thursday prior to the start of the draft. But if you're in town just for that week, we're also going to be at the mall the day before the draft. Make sure you check that out. We're going to be doing an event. A bunch of different creators are going to be there. A kind of mock draft event. That's going to be fun. Be on the lookout for that. I think Andy is doing an event the night before the draft. Is that right, Andy?
Wednesday night at Hagemeister Park, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. live Q&A, and I'm sure I'll hang around for a while after and probably just drink a lot and say hi to people. So looking forward to that as well. And then I might be doing something Saturday night after the draft as well. So keep an eye out for that.
So, Camo, that's awesome. I'm so happy.
Thank you, sir.
What a great way to come back home. That's awesome, dude. And please say hello when you do.
Very much so.
Tonezilla, what's going on, man? Jaden Higgins will be a Packer. Speak it. I mean, I just did, but I will say Jaden Higgins better be a Packer.
It's a fun player. What are your thoughts? Just really to time out really quick.
We'll talk about that, right? Yeah.
I don't even need to ask the question.
No, I mean, are you surprised at the lack of activity at the wide receiver spot from Green Bay?
I will say this is what we kind of have talked about this entire time of like, once you get past Adams and Metcalf, there's just not a ton that made a bunch of sense. And with the contract that Adams got everything he wanted in LA, he got the city, he got the quarterback, the coach, the competitive team, the huge contract. Like Green Bay wasn't probably going to, like, they probably had to go like $8 million more per year just to even get him to like consider not going to LA in that situation, which is just not going to be attainable to Green Bay at that point. And then Metcalf, again, 30 mil per year, plus a second round pick, plus you have to beat out the Steelers at that point, also a non-starter. And then you get past those two and it's like, well, we can get another rotational piece. We've got 5 rotational pieces already. Chris Godwin, of course, takes less money to stay in Tampa. I don't know if Green Bay would have been super involved in that anyway. And then again, there's not much left that you're like, wow, this is amazing. So yeah, it's probably kind of status quo here for the time being. Maybe they add someone like a Nick Westbrook-Akine, but in all likelihood, you're probably looking at the draft to go and get a player that maybe can be a field stretcher. Hope Christian Watson can come back. And I will say the one position that from time to time you can get, whether it be right before cutdowns or at a trade deadline, does tend to be wide receiver. So listen, if they go and address, pass rush and corner and offensive line, and wide receiver has to wait a little bit longer, what does Goody always say, Aaron? 365-day-a-year process. Like I'm willing to wait a little bit longer if that's what needs to happen at wide receiver.
I think you sign MVS to a 1-year deal. You draft Higgins and Cook. That's what I think is going to happen. Because look, so much of this is, to your point, I mean, after those top couple of guys, there's nothing there. There's a lot of dudes who are just going to take snaps away from your young developing players who need to continue to get on the field and play and develop. And that's the other thing. I think this group is set to take a big jump. And I know no one wants to hear that because we heard so much heading into last season about how talented they were, how smoking hot they were at the end of 2023, etc. Man, progression, development, it's never linear. These guys are going to continue to develop and get better. And I'm excited to watch whoever they add, whether it is somebody in free agency, but most likely the draft, and probably 1 or maybe even 2 in the draft. Yeah, Higgins, please, Higgins. I think he's the one guy in this draft who I'm like, there's a realistic chance they land him, and he's a perfect Packer receiver.
Yeah.
I love Matthew Golden as well, but I don't think he makes it.
Don't think that happens. Yeah.
Sergeant Dan, thanks for your super chat, man. Hey guys, sad about the ones we as fans didn't get, but the ones we got are dogs. So go Pack, go. I like that. See, that's a healthy attitude. I can get behind that. Michael, thank you, brother. I don't think Banks and Hobbs closing any meaningful distance between us and Detroit and Philly, but happy to be proven wrong. Your thoughts? That's an interesting proposition, Michael, especially since we are 4 or 5 hours into free agency. I think it's a little early to be calling about what's going to close or not close since, everyone's kind of up in the air at the moment roster-wise. I will say, though, interesting to see Detroit hop on DJ Reed quickly after Domofsky's report that the Packers were going to be in on Reed. I do wonder if the Packers, we got all the reports that the Packers didn't even call about Devontae, et cetera. I do wonder if the Packers were in on Reed.
Very possible. I think just to kind of go with the overarching question on this, though, of like Detroit loses Carlton Davis. So DJ Reed is sort of that replacement for Carlton Davis. And like they're sort of replacing some of the players that they're losing. You look at Philly, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, both gone from Philly, and they're going to add some pieces, I'm sure, as well as kind of time goes on, but they're also going to be replacing some of the big pieces. And those are two big pieces to lose along that defensive line for Philly. Green Bay is not going to lose anything of value or substance in this offseason. I know TJ Slayton signed today. Josh Myers is going to be on his way out and whatnot, but there's not a ton that Green Bay is going to lose here. They gain hopefully a healthier Jordan Love this upcoming season. And now you add two players that I think can help both in the secondary on the offensive line. And again, they're not done yet. They're going to add via the draft. This should be all pretty much a net positive for Green Bay in this offseason. There shouldn't really be much that is going to be a negative or like, oh, how do they replace that guy? So whereas Detroit and Philly do have to go through some of that, I think Green Bay is more adding to the core that they already have. And it might not be the big name signing like Saquon was for Philly last year, or that even Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs were for Green Bay last year. But these are two players that are going to help this team, give Green Bay more options. And again, it's all net adds at this point. Nothing's going to be a negative.
I think that's so spot on. And it reminds me of something Corey talked about all last year, as far as the comparisons and the frustrations for Packers fans, as far as butting their heads up against those two teams in particular, especially, the Vikings and Detroit, et cetera. Man, you talk about Detroit and Philly in comparison to Green Bay, where they are in their respective programs is so different. Andy, you're talking about Philly losing some real quality players. You talk about Detroit. What about the brain drain there? What about losing both of your coordinators? Big unknown there on offenses in particular, as far as what that's going to look like. I don't, and look, I'm not sitting here saying like the Packers don't have to do anything. Of course they do. Their own guys need to continue to develop. Matt really needs to figure shit out on offense. Like there's plenty to do, but I like the continuity Green Bay has as a young up and coming team versus, Detroit, you got the number one seed and did piss all with it. Now you lost your coordinators and you've got your own kind of issues roster wise. I'm not saying they've caught up, but I like where the Packers are headed, and they got a lot of work still to do, but they're in a good spot in that regard.
Yeah, we're on the same page, although I will say Aiden Hutchinson's going to be a pain in the ass to have to deal with again.
Forever and always. Yeah. And it sucks that we don't have a David Bakhtiari hanging out there where he couldn't do anything against Dave, so you knew he would always be on the other side. So at least you could slide that way or chip him or whatever. Yep. You don't have that luxury anymore.
Nope.
Rodrigo, thank you, brother. Do you think Morgan can or will win the left tackle job? Can, yes. Will, TBD. What do you think, Andy?
Well, how do you see this playing? So my thought process, and I know obviously I'm going off of some of Tom's report, Tom Silverstein, that is his reporting as well. Banks, and immediately when I saw Banks, I went and looked at his snap counts. He's played 5 snaps as a rookie at right guard, and ever since then, his second, third, and fourth year, every single one of his 2,000 plus snaps have been at left guard, right? So to me, that seemed like all right, he's going to go to the left. I love the idea of Elton going to center. I think his mind for the game, obviously going back to him playing center in college. And I know there was some snafus last year when he was in that center, but you give him mini camp and training camp and all of that just to solidify there. I love him at center. I think he's got the movement skills, the IQ for it. I think it is a perfect fit. And then I think obviously Zach Tom staying at right tackle. And then I think you have 3 players as of now for 2 spots. And I think you've got Sean Ryan, Jordan Morgan, and Rasheed Walker. And to me, you probably started with Walker at left tackle and Sean Ryan at right guard, but I think Jordan Morgan's going to have the opportunity to compete at both of those spots, and may the best man win. And again, we know that Green Bay wants competition along those spots, but I think 3 are pretty much, at least in some capacity. We know Tom, Banks, and Jenkins are going to be starting, and I think the other 3 are going to be competing for those 2 open spots.
Yeah, Mike kind of jumps you there with his question. What would your ideal starting O-line lineup be? I will say the one thing to remember, and Andy, you remember out on the practice field during training camp, I mean, Morgan was starting at right guard, until he hurt his shoulder. And then even when he came back, they had him kind of inserted in there right away. They want him out there. They're going to give him every opportunity to be out there, whether that is at right guard or left tackle. But he is going to get opportunities on the grass to win those jobs. Like, of that, there's little doubt. And here's my thing. I think he would have won that job like fair and square and gone on to be the starting right guard for most of the year if he doesn't get hurt. But in that stead, you talk about guys taking advantage of their opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, Sean Ryan seized it. He played better throughout camp and then into the year than he had his entire time in Green Bay. Like, that's zero doubt.
I think there's an argument to be made that he made as big, if not a bigger jump than almost anyone on the roster list here. At least he's in the conversation. Yeah. You know, this is a player going into, what was it, year 2? I didn't even know if he was going to make the roster because you had the nightmare first year where he comes in out of shape. And then gets suspended by the end of the year, comes in like over. There's another mention of him being overweight in his second training camp. And I'm like, I don't know if he makes it out of training camp. He makes it out of training camp and then it gets the opportunity to switch with John Runyon Jr. by the end of the season. And then again, now they draft Jordan Morgan and then they start putting him at right guard. You're like, man, is this guy just not going to catch a break? And then Morgan has the injuries and man, did Ryan take advantage of it, to your point. And I think he's on the right track, but it's going to be a good competition. And that's exactly what you want as a Packer fan.
We got Michael. Thanks for the super chat, man. I think Hobbs is rated, and I almost think you need a real nickel, not just someone who can fit there. Very excited to see Gladly use him. Versatility. Now let's get an outside cornerback too. Michael, I got a shocking development for you. Pretty much sounds like the Packers are going to at least initially start him outside. Although, as we talked about earlier, I love the versatility. I love the fact that he has played inside so much that you can utilize him regardless of what happens.
I do wonder too if their experiment with Keyshawn maybe had them do some thinking of like the slot position is just an absolute nightmare to play in the NFL. I cannot stress it enough of just the different things that you have to do as a blitzer, as taking on pulling tackles and guys like George Kittle and, you know, TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Juszczyk in the run game. And then, you know, having to go up against Derrick Henry running at you, not to mention then every shape, size of receiver that you could possibly imagine, from the fast, tall guys to the twitchy guys to like everything. Christian McCaffrey might line up there. Kittle might also line up. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. And to have to go against all of that. And it didn't have like, they can go in any direction too.
Then you got a bunch of guys, shifty guys with two-way goes. Every other
It
snap.
is an absolute freaking nightmare to play in that position. And I do wonder if like they thought like, hey, you know, if you get a guy that can play that like well, and then all of a sudden you give him a situation where he's got the height, weight, speed, everything on the outside, and you almost like simplify. If he's doing that in the slot, imagine what he can do on the outside. We kind of saw it with Nixon. I wonder if that almost like, kind of had them do
that idea.
Yeah, exactly. But probably not, but just throwing it out there, I guess.
No, I think there's something to it. One thing to remember, and this is something I was going to tweet out and then I got busy because, you know, news happens. But one thing to remember, and this, I just thought of this because of, you know, Ryan's reporting and Tom's reporting. They're getting that from sources, which are usually either a personnel folk, someone on personnel, or someone on the coaching staff. And the thing to remember is this time of year, yes, they have tons of ideas. They have tons of projections, what have you. But, man, that can change as soon as they get on the grass, you know, especially when they get to training camp. And, I mean, look no further than Jordan Morgan last year. And I know that's a draftee and not a draft pick, or not a free agent signing. But, you know, the talk all offseason was, he's a tackle. We drafted him to play tackle. He's going to be a tackle. And then we got to day one of training camp, and he was a right guard. You know, it's like, things can change, and what they perceive to be a strength, or maybe this isn't exactly what we thought, and maybe, we like to try him outside, but you know what, we prefer him inside. Like, all of these things are possible and pretty fluid when you're talking about them in March. That's just something to remember.
And to your point, like, what happens if all of a sudden Javon Bullard comes back and he looks unbelievable at safety? Like, and maybe you have an injury at either, you know, Evan Williams or Xavier McKinney or something, or, you know, Nixon comes back and all of a sudden like outside corner doesn't, like, there's so many different, there's moving parts on all of these things. And you never quite know what's going to evolve or what you might end up with in the draft. You might take some flyer guy in the 6th round of the draft as
who
like
just balls out in camp and
balls out
beats
and it
everybody
completely
out.
changes your calculus of everything.
Right.
So like all of these different things can happen, and you just have to sort of run with it. And that's why Goody loves versatility so damn much, is you don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be a year from now, if Hafley were to get a job, or what system might be in vogue next year. And you just have to be able to plug all these spots. And that's why he loves all these different versatile pieces in his on both offense and defense.
Sergeant Dan's got us with Banks is a beast. Let's go. Now let's grab a true center and Jared Wilson in the draft and seal up Love so he can pick the defense apart. I don't know if Jared Wilson is destined to be in the green and gold, but I will say, man, what you love about free agency is the opportunity it affords you in the draft, if something falls to you unexpectedly or no, that, there's no need to reach. You can let the board fall to you. And if, say, someone you have at a center who you have incredibly highly rated does fall, and you think, well, this is too good a value to pass up, you can do that and not have to worry about it because you've got your plan right now we're going to move Jenkins to center. But say they find a center who's amazing in the draft, and all of a sudden, okay, well, that could change the calculus. And that is exactly what you're just talking about there, Andy. It's you get plans on March, whatever it is today, 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever, 12th. That could change by post-draft minicamp. But we'll see.
Address needs in free agency so you don't have to use needs in the draft, because you start drafting for need in the draft and you start passing on guys that are better, and it comes back to haunt you almost every single time. So it's usually a good philosophy to abide by.
Big B is here. What's up, Big B? What's up, guys? Do you think there would be any interest in Azeez Ojulari?
That's your question, my friend.
I want it, Andy. I want it so bad. I love this kid's game. But I will be surprised if it actually happens. I think he is undersized, and I understand the reticence from the Packers' point of view as far as what Brian talked about at the Combine, where you love the idea of this guy who can come in and give you 15, 20 snaps and just fly off the edge on 3rd down and rack up sacks. But the moment you get a Rashawn Gary or a LVN or whoever injured, and now you have to ask Ojulari to play 40, 50, 60 snaps a game, holding up against 320-pounders. The kid already has dealt with a ton of injuries in his very young NFL career. Yeah. I don't know how realistic it is, but God, I love the idea of him in green and gold.
I am intrigued to see if they do add something here to the defensive front, because that seems to be the one. Again, wide receiver, it's going to be tough, but the defensive front, whether it's a pass rushing defensive tackle or a defensive end, you're running out of options. Obviously, there's a Chase Young still out there. I don't see Trey Hendrickson in Green Bay's future, although I would love to be wrong if that were the case.
Oh man, imagine if that broke right now. Come on, Brian, pull the trigger. Let's do it.
He's gonna, if he's gonna wait until we're exactly done, and then
yes.
that's when
so
you're
gonna get your another video. Yes,
an emergency. Yeah.
Right.
I'll take it. You know what? If it's what we have to do, Aaron, it's what we have to do.
It's the gig we have, no doubt. Matthew, thank you for the super chat. Hello from across the pond. Green Bay just got the best center in free agency without signing a center. Goody is a genius. Any news on Ireland game, Nags? Guinness is on me, sir. Go Pack, go. There is no news. I do know they're going to probably announce it somewhat soon, quote unquote. I would think in the next week or two. I don't think it's going to be Green Bay. I know the Packers desperately don't want to go. That between the Super Bowl and the Combine, I got that message loud and clear. I do think there's still a chance, though. I do think that the door isn't shut yet, but I think more likely than not, it won't be the Packers. In fact, what I heard at the Combine is it's probably going to be the Seahawks, but we shall see.
Do you think there's any inkling of wanting to see where Rodgers ends up, where if this, let's say they were going to do Steelers, Green Bay, and Steelers end up with Aaron, that do you think that's a less, I think Schneidman tweeted that there's no chance in hell that they basically put, Rodgers versus the Packers on Ireland at 8:30 in the morning or whatever is the case.
Right.
Do you think there's anything to it, or do you think it has no factor whatsoever?
I think there's a little factor. It's all part of the puzzle, right? I don't doubt for a moment that they would like to get an answer there. They being the NFL and the schedule makers, right? I don't think that would hold anything up, though. I don't think it's a question of we've got to wait for the Aaron decision. I mean, here's the other thing. I mean, the Rodgers stuff is funny too, because I know it's all kind of hanging in the air. But man, would you be surprised if he just hung it up? like, because I was thinking about that today. Like the fact that he is not day one pounced on tells you all you need to know. Like that's
Yeah.
the perception of Aaron Rodgers, and I understand he plays so great with a chip on his shoulder, and he's going to prove everybody wrong. And they're just like, yeah, I get that. But it also wouldn't surprise me if he just said, I'm announcing my retirement. If like we got that,
if there was an inkling of like it's not going to happen, I could see him maybe making the determination of just like there's not going to be anywhere for him to go, because there's 3 left, right?
Essentially
Giants, Steelers, and maybe Vikings. I guess maybe Colts would be the only other theoretical one.
I don't see that though.
I don't see that either. So it just, if all of a sudden like they dry up really quick and it just doesn't look like it, I could see us getting that announcement. But I have a feeling he's going to exhaust avenues before that happens and try to play if he can.
Yeah, you're probably right, but we shall see.
Nothing would shock me.
No, exactly. It is Aaron Rodgers. He could like fly off in a UFO, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Stewart, how you doing, man? This cash outlay means Hendricks is off the table now, right? What's the next for the pass rush? Hendrickson, I believe you mean. And no, I don't think it's off the table. I think they can pay whoever they want. I understand they're doling out a lot of money here, but they have more than enough flexibility that if Gutekunst was like, we got to make this happen, Russ Ball would be like, yep, okay, no problem. And that's not to belittle the question or like to dismiss it, because I understand like the concern as far as, well, we've kind of spent all this money, etc. But even coming into today, what was their effective cap was like 30 million, 29 million, something like that.
Yeah.
And they have maneuverability with the contracts on hand to free up literally over $70 million worth of cap space as far as like restructures.
They can do anything.
So they can do whatever they want. If like they 100% think this is the missing piece going to put us over the top, yeah, they can absolutely pull the trigger. As for we were talking about before, I don't think that's going to happen. What is next for the pass rush is they fired the defensive line coach.
Everything's fixed.
You would hope they would continue to add there from the outside, but there's every chance that we're going to count on LVN taking that next step and draft somebody, are 2 somebodies.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's looking at the outside as far as free agents on offer. I'm sure there are a number of guys who can come in outside of the Chase Young kind of component where that's a name that everybody knows. But man, it's not like there's a ton that jumps out at you. Like this guy is the piece of the puzzle that solves it.
No, you're basically down to Chase Young and then again, Trey Hendrickson being out there via trade. And then probably after that, you're once again in the rotational defensive end category of guys who can come, even if it's an Ojulari or someone like that, players who can play in a certain role, which again, there's value to that. I think same thing for the most part at defensive tackle, although we start seeing some of these guys like, I know Dalvin Tomlinson's getting released. Obviously Grady Jarrett got released today. So maybe there could be somebody else that ends up in that situation. But I think for the most part, you're probably looking at, again, maybe 1 or 2 guys in Young and Hendrickson. I don't think they would take a flyer on Bosa, but maybe if it was cheap enough, maybe they would look at something like that and just pray and hope that he stays healthy. But I think for the most part, you're probably looking at the draft and continuing to hopefully improve these players that are already there.
That would be the dream. John, thank you for the super chat, sir. Love this duo, but when are we getting the Banky Bukowski crossover? Just kidding. What names do you like that are still available to sign? Ojulari is my dream, but I don't think it's going to happen. But that is the one player that I have kind of earmarked all offseason that I absolutely love. And him along with Khalil Mack, who went back to the Chargers today. So those were my 2. One of them's in the dumper.
Yeah, I don't really have, I don't think any. I'm gonna have to go back and like sort of recombobulate after today and see who all is off the list and who is still available. I know of like all the guys that I kind of really wanted are gone. Trey Hendrickson is still, of course, like I went and watched him, Nagler, and it is I mean, to say the tape is fun is an absurd reaction for how I was giddy watching his tape. I'm just like, how is he doing? Like I joked, like he just absorbs everything. Like he's like Black Panther, and he just like, he absorbs it, and he just like continues to go. And it's like, he's completely unbothered by it. There's 325-pound offensive linemen that would literally take you and I and just like break us in part anytime that they wanted to. And they're doing everything they can to just slow this guy down. And he's just completely unbothered by it and just goes like, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to just still get to the quarterback anytime that I want to get to the quarterback. So I am not holding my breath for any more than a millisecond that's going to be something that Green Bay actually goes and does. But yeah, I mean, hell yeah, sign me the hell up.
It's a dream, though. It's a good dream.
I would love to be wrong. And again, make that happen, Goody.
The thing with him too is he's so consistent. I mean, just year in and year out, the guy just produces.
I don't know if you looked at this, and again, it's whatever. We're not basing anything off of this in its entirety, but the PFF grade was literally better every single year. There was one that went down like 0.6 from like 80.3 to like whatever. And like every single year has been up, going up to last year where it was his highest. Like he's literally getting better with age, which is also absurd at age 30 at this point.
You love to see it. Hopefully in a Packers uniform. We'll see. Joseph, thanks for the super chat, man. 2 goats right here. That's very kind. What is the move out there for Green Bay to make? Thank you to both of you. Have saved me hours during my Cali Bay Area commute. Go Pack Go. We appreciate you, Joseph. Thanks so much. The move. What is the move? Is to let the market settle down a little bit. That's what I suspect. I mean, much like we saw last year, they made their 2 big signings on day one, and then they let things settle. And I think that's exactly what they'll do, because you don't want to be paying, to quote Tom Silverstein, steak prices for hot dog stand food. You want to make sure that it's in line with what it's not that you can't ever overpay, because sometimes you just have to land the guy. But there's not a guy in this team for this team that is number one, like worth an overpay to the point where it's going to quote unquote put you over the top. Hendrickson is one of the rare instances, much like Myles Garrett would have been, where it changes the calculus on defense, and I'm all for making that swing. But as far as free agency goes, just let the market settle.
I honestly don't know that there is going to be a player that they could sign that's going to be a more per year than what they signed with Aaron Banks. Like I honestly, outside of Hendrickson, unless they trade for him, I don't know that there's anyone left at a position of need for them. Like there's not going to be a corner left that they're going to go out. And obviously they already signed a corner too, but like there's not going to be a corner. I don't think I don't think Chase Young goes for like the whatever 18, 19 million that Aaron Banks went for. He's probably going to be almost no matter what, unless they go get a Hendrickson, their biggest signing almost by default at this point. And then it just is a matter of, again, can they find value with somebody else that makes sense, whether that's a Chase Young or whether that's a somehow they find a wide receiver, whatever it might be. I think that's probably going to be the remaining answer to your point.
Jack, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for checking out the stream, man. Receivers will be great next year, and you can bank on that. Packers fans wanted Devontae cut, and look how great he turned out. Jack, I like your optimism. Of course, every time you bring that up, everyone says, you can't assume he's just going to be like Devontae. And Jack, I know you're not doing that. And I hope most Packers fans understand when I or Andy or anyone points out the fact that, yes, Devontae had a rocky road on his introduction to the NFL. It is but one example. Jordy Nelson suffered from drops early in his career. James Jones had guys pulling out their hair on the sideline early in his career due to his drops. I mean, drops are a problem, no doubt. They have to be corrected. But, man, you look at Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, both with way too many drops last year. Although I do find this funny. Speaking of Devontae, Andy, just by the NFL kind of official scoring for drops, Reed and Wicks, way too many. Both had 9.
Yep.
9 drops, way too many. Do you know how many new Los Angeles Ram receiver Devontae Adams had in 2024?
Wasn't it 9 as well, or right around there?
6.
8 or 9?
He had 6.
Okay.
6 by official tally. But it's like, so they had 3 more drops than the answer, according to some people, Devontae Adams. It's all relative, right? Like, when did the drops occur? Like, the 4th down one by Reed is the one that's going to stick with me forever. And it's like, that's got to stop. Like, that's the one he's got to hold on to. But, some are context driven, and are they bad balls? Is his arm getting pulled down and not getting called, etc.? So, yes, I think the development from within is certainly in the future for the Packers. And I'm not going to say it's the whole plan, but it is certainly a continuation of a plan that Brian and the Packers had when they ripped off the Band-Aid from Rodgers and went super young. Now is the time these guys should be coming into the prime of their career.
And actually per PFF, if you count Vegas and Jets last year, and again, per their counts, which were a little bit different than the NFL counts, 10 drops last year for Devontae Adams, 9 the year before for Devontae Adams. So
there you go.
Take that for what it's worth.
So some drops. Taylor, thank you for the super chat. Goody making decisions that make a guy wonder if the public is so caught off guard due to him having a greater idea of these players' football IQ than we as fans get to see. Taylor, that kind of tied a pretzel in my brain. I mean, a little bit. I get what you're saying. It was funny. I was talking to someone with the Packers last night on the eve of free agency, and we were joking, yeah, they're going to sign a bunch of guys that most fans don't know, and the scouts are going to be really excited about. And I kind of feel like that's what happened today. And it's
for the most part,
because we spend so much time on a very finite number of guys, content creation wise, right?
Yep.
And that's understandable because they're the ones that are most prevalent and known, and the most is known about them. But man, that's why, especially when it comes to Green Bay, that's where the pro personnel group, that's where they make their money, is knowing where the guy like Rasul Douglas is hidden away on a practice squad somewhere. That is legit their job. And so I'm very excited about the 2 additions. And I think, yeah, these are probably maybe not hidden gems because, again, the entire NFL knows about them. But the Packers' identification of young ascending players, it's been pretty spot on so far. And I suspect this will continue to be the case.
A couple other things in regards to this, too. Number one, and the most important one here is Green Bay's pro personnel department deserves every benefit of the doubt that they want. I mean, there are precious. I mean, you have to basically go back kind of to the Jimmy Graham, Mo Wilkerson, first free agent class of Goody to really get to a point. Like they have found guys like Keyshawn Nixon on a 1-year vet minimum, $0 signing bonus that has now parlayed that into a starting corner, 2-time first team all pro kick returner, et cetera, career in Green Bay. I know that the years after this didn't work out, but finding Devondre Campbell at the time on a 1-year, $3 million
in the process, too. That was a June signing, for God's sake.
First team all pro that season is a remarkable signing. Rasul Douglas off of a practice squad, like you mentioned, like they have done this incredibly well. And then not to mention, it's not this guaranteed thing where you go out and sign big money free agents. And it's just like, yes, it's a guarantee that they work out. And we don't need to go back to Terry Glenn, Joe Johnson, a variety of other players to know that this is not, it doesn't always work this way. I'm sorry to bring that up. But like you get to the point where you start seeing like Xavier McKinney and Preston and Za'Darius, the way that they can make Adrian Amos and Josh Jacobs this past year, like they deserve every benefit of the doubt. And then the other thing too is the difference between a scout. Obviously they're watching all of these players for so many different years and going through the trends of these players. They know who all they are. The other thing too is like, even if we wanted to, Aaron, even if we had a new episode every day, if I think there's honestly somebody Green Bay is going to sign, like I'm going to do that episode. I don't care if it's, a backup fullback from, Kent State. I don't care. I will do the breakdown. But man, if you and I are getting into like, if you and I had done an Aaron Banks centric episode, 2 weeks before the free agency started, nobody's still going to know about it because nobody would have watched the damn thing anyway.
3 people would have watched that. So, 2 of them would have been related to us. Yes,
it just it's worth noting as well. So we're trying to take not only just like we're trying to take calculated, looks of like who could Green Bay sign so we can know who they're talking about, but also, providing a, entertainment value so that you guys can listen to something too that is going to be worth your time and not just, Aaron Banks cut ups a week before. Because if he signs with the Colts, it is a huge waste of everyone's time.
Everyone's time. Zero question there. Will Carroll, thanks for the super chat, man. Some funny money deals. Glad we dodged them. Go Pack, go. I mean, there were some big money deals out there today.
Just really quick on this, was there any deal that you were like, oh my God, what the hell was that? And was there any deal that you're like, that was such a great value on day one? I really wish Green Bay would have done that. You can go in any direction that you want. You don't have to answer both or whatever, but were there any that stood out to you?
The Kinlaw deal with the Commanders was eye-popping.
Shocking.
I mean, look, they did a phenomenal job turning that roster around in one offseason last year, right? So talking about benefit of the doubt, I guess they see something there that they think works with their program, upside, what have you. But that was the one where I I kind of stopped. Like usually I just keep scrolling. I'm going, that's other teams. I don't care.
Yeah,
That was one where I was like, whoa, that caught me off guard.
I'll answer the other part. There wasn't one today where I'm like, oh my God, that's such an incredible value. Like I really, really wish Green Bay. There's a multiple that like, I thought the Odenigbo one for the Bears was like, that was very palatable for the contract. Yeah, I thought Adebo got more than I was expecting at 18 mil. I still probably could have managed it or whatever if that's what Green Bay did. But I don't think there was a single deal today that anyone did that I'm just like, wow, what an unbelievable value on day one.
It wasn't so much the deal, but I really wish the Packers had been on Grady Jarrett.
Fair.
And
that's fair.
Now having to play him twice a year is going to fucking suck.
Yeah,
but
very true.
That's just me. King, Kermit, thanks for the super chat. Just getting here, so starting over and not watching chat, but just had to say, let's go.
You can come and say that anytime. Doesn't matter where you're at in the chat.
Wade, appreciate you, buddy. Goody hits the nail more often than not. I trust him. What a refreshing attitude. Wait, that's one of your dudes. What? How come your guys are so like, perspective filled, Andy? What was that? Is this what your chat's always like? It's fair.
We actually just have you would just have a very, kumbaya sort of chat every time. And anyone that says anything disparaging immediately gets blocked because I'm soft.
Obviously, because you're soft. Yeah. Yep. We've gone over that. No question. Daniel, thanks for the super chat, man. You probably can't go into details, but who of Jair 12 or Z have you heard the most damning info regarding how they comported themselves at 1265? I got to be honest. I have not heard anything in regards to their character. Some football stuff. I've heard some wild shit about 12 in relation to an assistant coach or two. Jair, I know there's stuff there, but I haven't heard any of it firsthand. Like I remember when he got suspended last year, I remember being like, well, that feels awfully heavy-handed. And then 2 different people reached out and said there's been a lot going on behind the scenes. But what that behind the scenes is, I have no idea. And as far as Z goes, all I know is Z went AWOL.
Yeah.
Literally, the Packers had no idea where he was after he got hurt his final year in Green Bay. So that's kind of crazy.
And by the way, this is a good thing too, that not everyone knows what some of this stuff is happening and that it doesn't get out for the most part. And like, we still don't know why, like, what was it, like Kingsley Keke, or we don't even know why Josh Sitton got released out of like nowhere. Like there was like seemingly all this stuff. Like we don't even know it. Like some of these things never came out. So that's not the worst thing in the world.
I will never, ever forget asking Ted Thompson why he released Josh Sitton at the combine the year after he released him, because he released him after his final mandated press conference at training camp.
Right.
And he looked at me like I was an alien and he was like, who? What? And I said, Josh Sitton, we haven't talked to you since you released him. So why did you release him? And then he like hid behind the fact that he was a Bear and he couldn't talk about him, which was, of course, hilarious.
Yeah.
Aaron Harper, thanks for the super chat. What guy gets a new contract before the season? Oh, I think this one's pretty easy.
Go for it.
Zach Tom.
Yeah. There's
Zach
anyone.
Tom. Plug him in. Give him all the money. Zach Tom.
Yep.
Soder. I think Corey can answer this question. Interest in Michael Mayer? I doubt it. What do you think, Andy?
I doubt it too. I don't think they're gonna, reshape the tight end room in any sort of specific way. But yeah, I don't think so. I'd probably leave it at that. Simple.
I would be surprised, but I do think there's a decent chance that they add a tight end on day 3.
What's Michael? Where's he at in his contract? I'm just curious because maybe I'll throw a stupid thing out here because I'm an idiot. He's got 2 years left. All right, let me throw something by you if he's like available. If you could do, if like you just did like a change of scenery, a Musgrave for Mayer, I'm kind of somewhat intrigued of like, would I do that? I probably, I don't know if the Raiders would have any interest.
Andy, I would do it.
All right, I would too. I think he actually fits this offense. Mayer actually fits this offense a lot better than Musgrave does. I don't know why the Raiders would necessarily do it, but I would actually entertain that if there was some sort of, again, change of scenery, 2 tight ends going different spots.
I just can't handle another snap of Musgrave in the backfield having to come across the formation like he's going to block someone and just getting absolutely roasted and just completely blown up usually into the path of the ball carrier. Like I can't, man. You got to get up in there and block. That's what I need. Zach, Thanks for the super chat, man. It's been a perfect Bears offseason for Packers fans. Either we get the NFL's premier rivalry back on track, or the Bears get it all and still suck.
Cool with that.
That's a fair point. Zach, you're making good points over there. William, thanks for the super chat. Do you think they trade down and accrue picks if what they want ain't there at 23? Remember, in the early days of Ted, it was the best pick available. What do you think there, Andy?
Within the realm of possibility, I could easily see them going from 23 to 30, 31, 32, something like that. I do think they'll probably stay in round one if at all possible, unless there's just a breakthrough trade that makes all the sense in the world for them to do. But yeah, I could easily see that. We heard from Goody of like, you've only got 8 picks, and he's like, for now, I think he would love to get a few more bites at the apple, like he likes to say. So yeah, I think it's well within the realm of possibility. And I think this is one of those drafts where probably the difference between like 12 and 40, or sorry, like 20 and 45 is probably not super massive. And if you can get good value for it and some team's willing to move up, sure, why not?
I got to call up my guy, Jonathan here. Jonathan, you're usually on my channel. Why you coming to us on Andy's channel?
Oh, look at this. We've got rivalry here.
Feels like a betrayal to me. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Jonathan says, I'm late, so you may have covered it. Is Elton a better option at center than Tom? I thought Tom was thought to be a high-quality center in the building. Well, I know that's what someone told Rob Domofsky a couple years ago. That's for sure. But how realistic that is as far as a projection, I don't know, man. I've seen Elton do it at a real high level in college, and I know Tom did as well. But I think Elton makes a lot more sense, especially given how well Tom has played at tackle.
I just don't know how you can move Tom off a tackle. I mean, even in the slight offshoot that he goes to center and just doesn't look or feel the part, and then now you've taken all this time to move somebody else to right tackle. And it's like, you've got a damn good right tackle who's probably about to make 30 million. Plus, you try convincing Zach Tom to move off of right tackle right now and move to center. You're 30 million per year as a right tackle. So good luck with that conversation, because it's probably not going to go very far.
Oh, but this is the Packers, and they treat all their guys like dirt, Andy. You know this. That's how it works. Lucas, thanks for the super chat. Imagine if he shocks us all and trades for Parsons. LOL. Have a good week, guys. Man, that would be fun. The whole Parsons love connection in the podcast room, that would be great. But I do know Parsons has talked extensively about how he's a Cowboy and he's Jerry Jones's guy and he's not going anywhere. So
I don't think so either.
We shall see. Paladin Page, thanks for the super chat. Trade Sheed, Jai, and 3rd pick for Hendrickson. 3rd round pick? I think you're going to have to trade probably your 2nd round pick at least along with those dudes. I mean, I like how you're active, though. It's a fun concept.
We should before looking at it bet if it's your guy or my guy from the channel to see who makes the comments. I honestly don't know that one, so I'm not saying it one way or the other. But it would be very fun, almost like the SNL skit of. Never mind, we won't get into that.
Paladin Page, he's coming from your channel, sir.
Damn it! No, I'm just kidding. The one thing I will say though, about like I've seen this a lot of like, well, change. They're trying to get off of salary if they're trying to get off of Hendrickson, right? So taking on salary does not make a ton of sense for the Bengals in this equation. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's rather unlikely. I think that they would take on salary while trying to shed salary.
RCS, appreciate you. My 2 sober dads, thanks for the great talk. Go Pack Go. Yeah, 2 sober dads.
I've just got a brisk iced tea. I wish it was a Long Island, but it's just a brisk.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right. There we go. Wesley says, give us Hendrickson. They're starting to demand things, Andy.
I'm all for it.
Demanding them.
Go pick it outside at 1265 until he trades for Hendrickson. I'm cool with it.
Doug Hype, what's up, man? Today's moves are absolutely perfect. Love it. See, now there's someone from my side being like respectful and having perspective. So we're chipping away at him, Andy. We're chipping away. Ralph, thanks for the super chat. The Packers are like a retirement stock, 60% stock, the rest bonds. Never want a blue chip stock, too risky. Just get back 7%, stay steady. Okay, Ralph, I feel like this is a slight. I feel like this is a backhanded compliment.
I think so too.
Like when you were young and they said like invest in like, the things that aren't going to be volatile, like Disney or whatever. And now it's like everything's, by the second because of the internet. People want all the flashy stuff. Although I will say, hey, man, hope you enjoyed that crypto wave as it happened, and I hope you got out at the right time. That's all I can say.
Here's just a couple things on this really quick. One, this would have a little bit more validity to me, maybe if they didn't just sign Jacobs and McKinney a season ago and make, again, some pretty significant free agent signings that were the flashy variety that, people were looking for. And then it always looks like really good when a team goes kind of all in and it's like, oh, look, they got a Super Bowl out of it. You also could end up like the Saints. And the Saints are going to be in one of the crappiest situations known to humanity for the next 5-6 years plus. And they got no Super Bowl out of it. So yeah, if you're going to do it, definitely by all means pay it off. And I think there's a time and a place for it. And I would argue over the longevity of the Favre Rodgers eras, there probably needed to be a couple more of those levers pulled where we're like, you know what, we need to really go for this thing. Really, and I totally understand it, but you do really need to be careful with it because, man, if you miss and you miss being aggressive, it is going to hurt you for a while.
A long time. Ed Oswald, thanks for the super chat. With all that is going on in the world, you guys are a welcome relief. Thank you for all your great work and what you do. Go Pack Go.
Appreciate that.
I'm getting all misty-eyed over here. So much positivity. Andrew's Paradise, what's up, man? Bears still suck. I'm into brevity. Brevity is the soul of wit, so you shall be brief. Big time shout out to Most Hated Minnesotan gifting 5 Pack-A-Day podcast memberships and 5 Cheesehead TV memberships.
That's awesome,
you,
man.
sir, are amazing. Along with Sergeant Dan gifting out 5 Pack-A-Day podcast memberships. Folks, awesome. You got no excuses not to be members.
Totally agree.
Ken throwing it down here in the super chat. Sign MVS. Enjoy you two guys. Thanks, Ken. I enjoy you too. Yeah, what's funny is we'll probably wrap it up here in a little bit, but I think MVS is still the most likely signing remaining that's out there. That's just me.
Yeah, I did an episode a while back of most likely free agent signing at each position, and of course struck out on all of them. But I think MVS is the one that I had at wide receiver for that one. So it's just obviously there's a reason for it. He's on the more of the value side. He's played in the offense before. He's that field stretching element that they definitely need. So I could definitely still see that happening in some capacity.
And he's a dog in the run game on the perimeter, erasing corners out there, giving you the edge. Man, yeah, I think it makes all the sense in the world. And it's a 1-year rental, essentially. Getting ready for Watson to come back, hopefully by week 12, etc. Andy, you're the man, the myth, and the legend. I appreciate you. Any other parting thoughts before we head out into the evening? And hopefully, as we get done here, we get the breaking news that the Packers have made a huge move and we get to do this
there
all
we
over
go.
Again.
Just the one question I think we haven't discussed that's semi-interesting is I'm assuming the Hobbs transaction means the end of the Jair Alexander era, if the end of the Jair Alexander wasn't already upon us. But just quick thoughts on how that changes any sort of calculus with that.
I think it gives them a little added protection, but I don't think it changes much. I saw Rob's report this morning where he said, as of today, Jair is still on the roster. I'm like, yeah, there's no reason for him not to be.
Yeah.
There's no lever to be pulled here. There's no signing bonus date. There's no workout bonus to worry about. They can hold on to him as long as they want. I talked to you on the radio this morning. I did think there was a chance that they would let him go so he could hit the market, and that could still happen on Wednesday when the new league year actually begins. So there's some stuff to play out there, but I will still be absolutely shocked if they have him on the roster next year.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair.
I want to shout out Doug Hype for a last second super chat. Would love a quick twitchy pass rusher in the top rounds. We need pass rush. Also would not mind one of the freaky corners. I mean, as long as we're making lists, that's a pretty good place to start. And I do think there's a decent chance that one of those happens. No question about it. All right, Andy, you're the man. Thank you so much for the time. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here live on this joint Cheesehead TV Pack-A-Day podcast live stream. Packers, day 1 of free agency, or at least the legal tampering period, somewhat in the books. We'll see what the rest of the week holds. Andy, thank you so much, man.
Thank you as well. Well, I'm sure be talking again soon with all the other stuff that's happening, but can't thank you enough for the opportunity and always fun chatting with you, man.
Talk to you soon, man. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.